You are listening to Think Theory Radio.
Radio.
Hello, and welcome to Think Theory Radio, the show that brings you topics outside the mainstream realm of thought and ideas to make you think. And I'm your host, Dameon Perdue, your guide on this metaphysical ride of audio delights. And actually, this is one of the very few times that the guest coming on fits into my opening intro liner, or whatever I say, my little description. And yeah, that's because today we have on a good friend, also a musician, historian, teacher, and author of several books, including the one we're going to discuss today, which is a 3-volume basically manual in the power of sound, and it's called Sounds Good, Sounds Great, Sounds Amazing, The Spiritual Science of Sound and Vibration, volumes 1, 2, and 3, and that is Dameon Keller, or Dameon Michael Keller. Which do you prefer, my friend?
Any of the above.
Okay.
When you start publishing books and getting checks written to yourself that you can't cash because your ID doesn't match, you got to go back to your legal name.
Right.
It's the way it goes.
Got to get that money.
Yeah. 3 different spellings throughout my life, and my mom sends me mail that they're like, keep this. No, you can't have it. And I'm like, really?
Right. And we go back. Back we were working together on music back in the '90s, and so we always had that. I was demonology, or Damien, and you were Damon, or Damien.
Right. You even went by Damon. I mean, we both went by Damon or Damien.
Exactly.
And you were the first person I ever met that went by either. I never even met another Damien until I met you.
Oh, yeah.
And, Lunchbox is like, Damien, whatever, and I'm like, I'm Damien, whatever.
Right.
Like, cool, wow, I'm not alone. All right.
And, so second time on the show, and I've been wanting to get you back to discuss the, power of sound and sound healing and what, and not only kind of the real actualization of it, but also, kind of debunking some conspiracies and, the kind of the YouTube kind of clickbait stuff that's out there. And I've been reading it. I'm almost done with the 3rd volume. And there's some great stuff. Like it's like I said in the intro, it's kind of like a reference manual because there's so much in there.
Yeah.
But now, before we get into the book, though, because like I said, we used to work on music back in the day. Now, you were in bands, you produced music. Now, but what led you to go from being like a musician into a sound healing teacher, kind of scientist in this regard?
Well, basically, after doing it I was about 40. So let's say I was doing it for, 25 years, professionally. And it was just like, you hear these stories of people like, well, I had to hit rock bottom before I figured it out, and honestly, that's what happened to me. I was playing in 6 bands, DJing like 5 nights a week, making great money, but also you're unsure of like, where's my future in this? I got no insurance, I got no 401k, you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm doing okay, but like, it's that rock star path where, like, or the not rock star like you're on a major label, but it's that underground rock star path where, like, day to day I'm doing fine, but there's no long term, and how long can I do this? And then, I just realized, along with my health, I straight up, I smoke cigarettes, I drink, I switched to organic natural spirit because it's not killing me. It's 100% organic tobacco. I switched to Bud Light because, not politics, but because I have a weed allergy, and it's rice beer, and it's affordable, so, you make these things, you do these things in your life, but I'd heard all my life from my mom about chakras and crystals and everything, and I believed in it to an extent. But then when all this healing, frequency stuff started coming out online, like the Solfeggios, you mentioned, we're going to debunk some things. We're going to get to that, and you get all this stuff online when the internet first came out, and I'm working a call center job in Chicago and playing in these bands and DJing and stuff, and you start digging, and I'm like, well, to me, I'm a certified sound engineer. I'm a musician. Frequencies are something that are quantifiable, and I can determine if this is real or not. You know, like there are ways to debunk or prove certain things. I actually offered $1,000 for anyone to prove to me that in biblical times they could measure a frequency, because the concept of a frequency wasn't invented until 1,000 years after the Bible. But the Solfeggio people claim these frequencies came from the Bible. Well, we didn't even have a second as a measurement of time in biblical times. So, like, what are you talking about? You know, like, none of this made sense. And all I have to do is sit there and Google for 8 hours a day during my phone job on my little phone, you know, and I'm like, this is nonsense, you know. But then you find some things are true, like the Schumann resonance being the same frequency that comes out of your hands when you do Reiki or healing work, you know, and being a great brainwave entrainment frequency to utilize if you want to go into a meditative state quickly, or you know, just use it to help heal yourself if you're not doing good, you know. And so, you know, certain things are, everything's quantifiable, but that means you can you know, prove it or disprove it pretty easily, you know, if you have the time and resources to do the research, which fortunately to me I did, and unfortunately to a lot of other people they don't. You know,
right.
So they just look at it and they go, well, it's on the internet, it must be true. So,
yeah, and I think it spirals too. You know, it's like one person latches on to the next, and oh, I'm gonna do this too, and then you know, and then it's a lot of clickbait stuff. It's like, how do you get traffic to your page, and you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, well, even the Solfeggio guy had a contest. Like, if your band tunes to Solfeggio, meaning if you're playing in regular temperament, just tune up, which is the opposite of what you should do, you know, then we'll put it on our site and maybe you can win this contest. And, you know, like, I emailed him about it because at the time I was still believing it, and I was playing in a band that recorded in that pitch, and I never even heard anything back, so it was silly.
So, yeah, so now, all right, now bring us to the point where you decided, hey, I'm going to start writing a book on what is the real science behind, you know, sound and vibration. You know what, before that, though, before we get to that, let's break down, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that, you know, you hear the words frequency, vibration, you know, notes, tones, but a lot of people don't really fully understand what that is, you know, or what the difference of those are. You want to break down, like, what's a frequency, what's a tone, what's the difference?
All right, well, so a frequency is a cycle of a wave per second, CPS, you know, and cycle per second of a wave. And we can call it Hertz, because Hertz was the scientist that discovered it. So basically it's how many times a wave vibrates in a second. So if it's only one vibration up and down, so imagine a straight line, you know, just a straight line across the middle of your sight of vision, and then there's a wave that starts at the front of that, you know, to the left, and it goes up and then it goes down, and then it goes up and then it goes down, and it goes up and it goes down. That's a wave. But if there's only one of those, up and down, that's one cycle per second. So you start from there, and then you can measure up in intervals from there as to what the different frequencies are in notes. And there's fractions, you know, so 1.5 hertz, you know, would be a cycle and a half per second. And, you know, some of these, when you think about our brain waves are waves. They're sound waves, and they operate below our hearing. Our hearing is about 20 to 40 hertz to about 20 to 40,000 hertz. Well, our brain waves are about 0 to 20 or 40. So, you know, people are like, raise the frequency. Well, no, not really, because to go into a meditative state, you want to lower that frequency. To go into a healing state, you want to lower that frequency. And some frequencies can trigger like the release of serotonin and pain-relieving endorphins in our body, in our brain, to our body. So you can listen to these frequencies, get your brain wave to do things that drugs with side effects would normally do, but you don't need those anymore. Like there's no need, because you can train your brain to release these things. So when people are saying, raise your frequency, raise your vibration. Well, if you raise your vibration, the higher you tune in A440 Western temperament, the more out of tune you are. You hear about 432, dropping everything down 8 hertz. It helps a little, but it's not a total solution, and people are disillusioned about that, but we'll get into that later. But the point is that your brainwave frequencies are actually very low frequencies. Your meditative states are very low frequencies, and so to access those, you have to kind of either do it on your own, which the Dalai Lama said, hey, this takes me 4 hours a day to get to this state. If there's something that can get me there in 10 minutes, bring it on, So, there's scientific advancements in the past 100 years that can enable us to do those kind of things. So when you're talking about frequencies and vibrations, again, it's quantifiable. Our brain waves are certain frequency. When people do touch therapy and vibrations are literally coming out of their hands, they're at the Schumann Earth resonance, which radiates from the center of our Earth to the ionosphere. You can look at these things and say, and you go to Sedona vortexes, and my buddy Ben Lone Tree proved that they amplify the Schumann resonance in those vortexes, and they put a plaque up for him. I mean, you can quantify these things now that people have been speculating on, and other people have been calling bullshit on for decades. I mean, well, there's no vortexes, and they said, well, there are. It just proved it. So, so that's basically frequencies, vibrations, things like that. It's a huge world that needs to be explored more than it is. And people need to keep in mind that when they're reading things about 432 or things like that, 100 years ago and further back, you couldn't find a person who didn't know music. If you look at bands like the Beatles, they went to high school in England. They didn't have to go to college. They're already pro musicians before they graduate high school. You're taught piano. You learn other things, and you're taught how to sing. And we don't do that in this country, and so it's something that's becoming lost, and that's by design, so that people just don't understand it anymore on even a basic level, which is a shame.
Yeah, definitely. And you brought up, and like backtracking a little bit, but you're talking about like the higher frequency, and that's become kind of this trendy thing, that relates kind of like the, spirit signs, you gotta ascend, and no low vibrational people and stuff like that. And I'm always like, I was thinking, but bass is the best stuff, and that's the low vibration,
I even talked about it in my first book, like who likes high frequencies?
Right.
People who do lots of coke and speed,
Right.
Who likes bass? People who smoke weed and treat each other well. You know what I mean? Like that's you can't ignore that. There's definitely something to that. Who like psychedelic music? People who take psychedelics. It's culturally relevant. Everything to do with music and everything to do with the way that music affects you, and you're basically just feeding off each other, of course. But I mean, like attracts like. Like, well, I'm tripping balls, I'm gonna listen to the Grateful Dead, or
well, isn't it also to like the higher isn't higher frequency going into like radiation and stuff like
right, then you're going into light and ultra things like that. Like what's that got to do with intelligence or enlightenment or awakening or anything like that? When you go into those lower states, those are what take you to the meditational states. And this has been proven. People have been wearing EEGs and meditating for decades, and I do it. I have 2 EEG systems, and I put them on, and I can see it on the screen as I take deep breaths and listen to the tracks, I can see it work. That's how I know they work. And then I try them on different people, and it works for them. So I know they work. And then I go get a heart check, and they put me on the EKG and the EEG. And I'm like, okay, so my heart rate's probably about this, and my brain waves are probably about this, but watch this. And I close my eyes, and I take deep breaths, and I listen to one of my own tracks in my head. And then about a minute and a half later, I'm like, so that's all different now, right? I should be about this and this. And they're like, how the hell did you just do that?
Right.
You know, I'm like, it's called mind over matter, you know? I mean, if I think about lemonade, my mouth waters, it's no different. It's mind over matter. It's that simple. You can change these things. I just slow my breathing. I put this vibration into my brain, and then my brain reacts. It's extremely simple, and it even works on people with post-traumatic stress disorder. You know,
Yeah.
you can curb panic and things like that, like almost instantly. And you know, it's illegal in some countries.
Oh, wow. That's
Like
crazy.
in Dubai, I have a student in Dubai, and like brainwave entrainment is illegal in the next country over from them.
What?
You know? Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's
wild.
insane. But all music is brainwave entrainment. It's
Right.
just not usually good.
Right.
You know? So, I mean, you know, it doesn't make sense. I mean,
Yeah.
it does, because we know better. We know why it's illegal, but, you know, they don't.
Right.
What the hell's going on here? You know?
Well, speaking of brainwave entrainment and good music, we got to take a quick break. We're gonna play a track going into break. It's Cosmic Keyboard, and it's Keller #1. And this is some of the music and brainwave entrainment that Dameon Keller has done, and we'll be back after this. Welcome back to Think Theory Radio. This is Dameon, and today I'm joined by another Dameon, or Damon, author, musician, and we're discussing his 3-volume sound healing reference manual. That's what I'm calling it. It's called Sounds Good, Sounds Great, Sounds Amazing. And the track that you just heard going in and out of break is the Cosmic Keyboard track that you made. Now, why don't you break down that track, and also what is the Cosmic Keyboard?
Right. So, you know, I kind of went off on another rail, but you did ask how the first book started getting written, and that's because of
that's
my
right.
search for the... Well, and that ties into this, so it was my search for what are the frequencies of the chakras, because most sound therapists will use the C major scale. That's incorrect. So technically, when you look at color octaves, and if you use a scientific calculator, you'll see that C, which is basically prime, the root note, and what everyone used to tune to before it was switched to A, it should be at 1 hertz. And then if you use a scientific calculator up to terahertz, you're going to find that frequency is green, the color of the heart chakra, not the root. So when people use C for the root and then go from there, it's completely off and almost opposite. And a lot of times, if you're if you're utilizing your heart chakra on your root chakra, you might, from an esoteric aspect that we might look at, start to see some of the issues with sexuality in society today. So this was a big issue, when I first figured it out, and by searching and going through the Solfeggios and all that, and then debunking those, I'm like, what is the true notes of the chakras, so I can make a sound therapy session. I'd already built a system for the low frequency vibration table and everything, and I figured it out. And the only other people who knew about it were actually secret societies, what most people would call secret societies. The Rosicrucians know about it. The Steiner's order that was broken off from Theosophy knows about it and uses it, and they have lodges in Chicago. So I would go there and discuss these things, and they're like, they're not even practicing those anymore. The Rosicrucians aren't. The Steiner group is. The Anthroposophical Society is utilizing it, but but with guitars and pianos, which it's still kind of off, So anyway, I'm figuring all this out, and me and Carla hadn't been in touch for a long time. Dameon remembers Carla from Stereotypes and the groups we all worked with together, and Shyrock All Stars and all that. Carla was the vocalist in my group. And we were together on and off for 15 years, and she is very spiritual, and she's a spirit guide reader, and I hadn't even talked to her about any of this work I was doing, and she was posting on Facebook she's doing spirit guide readings, and I'm like, cool, let's do it, and she's like, well, so she meditates for a minute. She goes, they're telling me, don't stop your research. Record everything and share it with everyone. And she's like, experimenting? You're not experimenting with anything, are you? And I'm like, well, I just tried to fix my friend's tinnitus with frequencies yesterday, and also on other things, yes. Yeah, I am,
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, okay, yeah, now I'm getting some more info. Yeah, you need to write a book. And I was writing everything down just because, I smoke and I have poor memory.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I have to write it down for my damn self. I wasn't thinking about anybody else at that point. But when you start doing healing work, one thing you realize really quickly is that it is helping you. I do smoke, I do drink, I have a heart condition, sometimes I eat food that's not the best for me, not often, but I do, like everybody else. I have my flaws and my daily habits, so, I need something to counter that, and I need to start, paying attention as I'm getting older. But also, if I find something that works, I can't be greedy and keep it to myself, you have to let other people know, hey, oh, you're not feeling good today? Well, I can tell you this is why. I used to drink Coca-Cola. I used to drink coffee till Coca-Cola time, which was lunch, Coca-Cola till beer time, which was off of work. And I had migraines all the time. I know you used to go through it. We both used to call off sessions because of migraines, We didn't sleep enough. We didn't drink water. You quit the sugar, you sleep, you drink water, you're good. Migraines are gone, so it was that simple, and that's when I was like, okay, I got to start writing the book, that's what it is. So the cosmic keyboard is what I found. The C is prime. C is your heart chakra. Energy expands. It's not linear. It doesn't go to bottom to top. It doesn't go top to bottom. It starts at your heart, the center, and then it expands from there, and that's where that comes from, and that's why it works. And if you do it with chromotherapy, with light therapy on top of it, it's only better, and that's basically where it comes from.
Now you just
the chakras.
And now you're mentioning chromotherapy. Now, explain that a little bit for people.
Well, chromotherapy is light therapy, and so most chakras, people attribute the chakras as 7 energy centers in the body, root to crown, and your heart at the center. and they attribute red to the root and purple to the crown throughout the light spectrum. So you go red, orange, yellow, light blue, light green, green, blue, the light spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
You go through the 7 colors, and then those are your chakras, or associated with your chakras. And chakras are really just the glands. So before people started cutting people up and discovering the glands, Indians, as in dot, not feather, Indians from India,
Mm-hmm.
Knew about these by intuition. And then when scientists in the West started cutting people up and discovering the glands, they found all those to be true. So really the only speculative thing in my work whatsoever is that the colors associate with the glands, but that's also based on thousands of years of people attesting to this, so other than that, if the colors do associate with the glands or the chakras, then these are the frequencies that go with them. And it's not starting at C sharp major scale. It's C major scale. It's starting at G sharp, and then A, and then it goes up from there. And C is the heart in the center. And you can add in the other 12 notes of the scale and find other correlations, like the Schumann resonance just below the heart, Ohm at just between the heart and throat, which is like communication with the cosmos. So when you do that and line it up on the human body, you line up the 12 notes with their color coordinations, you get what we call the cosmic keyboard, which is everything each note can do to the human body. And that's in all octaves from color to subharmonics, and brainwave entrainment frequencies. So if you synchronize those, and you even do the brainwave entrainment frequencies in sync with the tempo of the track, so there's no what I call ghost frequencies, there's no disharmony whatsoever, and everything's in sync, you're going to get a really good result really quickly. And that's what I've been doing, and it works better than any other system I've found so far.
And as you were talking, I was just kind of speculating about, because you were saying, the only thing that you've kind of, are guessing at, I guess, if you want to say, is the colors aligning with the sound and the chakra. But I was just thinking about how DNA itself actually does produce photonic energy, right? So there is, it's very, small amount of light, but it essentially is a light source. And I wonder if you could somehow, I don't know if you'd have to use an X-ray or some other kind of mechanism to see the different, energy centers, the different glands, and if they do emit photonic energy in a certain light, because the light, in color, it's all related, And the other thing I thought, that's for your 4th book.
Keep in mind, I could actually facilitate that. My co-author's on the German board of radiology, and he's the head of radiology at the largest hospital in Kuwait. So that's not
and that's the other great
possibility.
See, there you go. And that's the other cool thing about your book that people should know, is that you're working with very, established doctors and scientists and people in, different realms, different experts in these different fields that correlate to what you're writing about. So it's not just you just kind of like throwing stuff out there. You're actually doing this very thorough research. I mean, honestly, I was, I expected it to be good, but I was surprised at the amount of kind of disciplined research that you put into this book, as far as really getting into researching which different frequencies, which different tones, all the different octaves, and talking to these different people that are working with, like Susan Alexander, who created music from frequencies of the DNA, like we were talking about.
Yeah, I actually utilize those. I put all the frequencies that she came up with in an Excel file. Mm-hmm. And then I get all the octaves up and down, all the way up to our last audible frequency, all the way down to brainwave entrainment. And I made 4 tracks, one for each of the, it's just because,
Mm-hmm.
and including brainwave entrainment frequencies, just as like, let's see if this stimulates and, quote unquote, activates our DNA. I mean, if anything's going to, it would be this, you know, so why not make it happen? And so I made 4 tracks that did that are on one of the albums, you know. And thanks for that. I mean, I did really dig in hard. I was blessed to have mad amounts of time off of work for first a layoff, where I got 2 years of unemployment under Obama and got to research, and also I'd been putting 8% of my income into stocks and selling it on the quarter. It was an online school, and I was making more money than when I was working and doing what I, you know, my real research.
Yeah.
And then I had a slow season and took a part-time job, and then I had to get some dental surgery, and they fired me for taking days off I didn't have doctor notes for. I'm like, I was on Vicodin. I'm pretty sure I signed a thing that said, don't come in if you're, you know, incapacitated.
Right.
You really want me talking to people, you know? And so I sued them for unemployment, got another 2 years off, and continued what I was doing, you know? So it's like, you people are idiots.
Right.
You're just paying for me to do what I'm really supposed to be doing, because I'm stumbling on all this, and now I have the time to really dive in. And that's the only reason it's as in-depth a research, because the universe just handed, you know, this
opportunities,
you know,
or the
5
time.
years of opportunities. Yeah, and a funny story is, so after the first book came out, that's when Dr. Gerard hit me up, and I was starting to work on the second, and running into some walls, and Dr. Gerard hit me up, and he's like, well, I'm halfway through your first book, and you know, I have these ideas and this and that, and like, I'd love to help you fund the second book if you do this research for me, you know. And he starts sending me money. And so, funny story is, when you live in a 3-bedroom apartment by yourself with no job in Chicago, and you start getting large PayPal deposits from Kuwait City into your PayPal account, they shut your account down real quick. So my account got frozen. And I had to call them and say, please call out the SWAT team.
Right.
I'm not a terrorist cell. He's a doctor, I'm a scientist, we're writing a book, you know, and he's funding my research, you know. And like, and I have to pay rent in a week, so if you could just unfreeze that, that'd be great. So, and I'm not working except on this. So,
Right.
Yeah, they froze it up, and I'm like, you can Google both our names. He wrote a 400-page book that's on Amazon on radiology. He wrote a manual. It's 400 pages, you know, and I'm like, you can Google both of us. We're both published authors already. We're working on a book together. And oh no, that's not necessary. I hear them typing away. Like, I know they're looking us up.
Yeah.
I'm like,
You know that.
I know. Anytime somebody tells me they have a website when I'm on my day job, I'm like, oh, check it out right now. I'm
Exactly.
bored as hell.
Right.
I'm just talking to you, you know. So,
Well, and speaking of that, traveling
anyway,
too. But you've also, that's other part of the book though, is the travels you've done to several different places that I think are really interesting. One, 2 of them that I would like to get a little story behind is, one is your trip to the Integratron out there in it's near Joshua Tree, right? And then
out past there.
Yeah, and then the other one is when you were in Germany and you went to St. Hildegard's Abbey, right?
Yeah.
And you studied there as well. So break down, both of those and how that relates to your studies.
Sure. Well, I'll start with Integratron, because the Integratron is a giant parabolic dome, which means it's perfectly round, and it's got, amazing acoustic properties, and it's out in the high desert west of Joshua Tree, east of Joshua Tree in California. So I flew out there, and then rented a car, flew to LA, and then rented a car, drove out there, and to go record, and it was amazing. I mean, I had to take off my necklaces, and I had a couple bracelets on and stuff, and even my hoodie, because anytime I would bump into myself or jewelry would rattle, it was just like, the echo was insane. Like, like you hear the word echo chamber, and you don't know what that means really until you're actually in one, and you're just like, oh my god, this is insane.
Was it like painful, or was it like?
No. Just It's just loud.
Yeah.
Like every little tiny sound you make just echoes back at you 10 times as loud, but it echoes and delays and reverberates, and you're just like, God has a delay pedal on my whole room right now. You know what I mean? It's just, that's the way it feels. It's just insane. So you have to be real careful and everything. But I set up 4 mics and I recorded, 4 tracks at a time, and it was just amazing. But I did the singing bowls and I did all this stuff in preparation for the low frequency vibration sound therapy tracks, because I was supposed to be working with this company in Schaumburg. Well, the owner passed away, and they went out of business, and so my buddy Jimmy I was in a band with was like, oh, you could probably build a system yourself. And I look on Amazon and find the transducers I sent to you, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just built the system myself and started doing it. But yeah, the trip to the Integratron was crazy. It was full of delays, and then so I got there late, and about 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, keep in mind, the Integratron was built back in the 50s by someone who claimed that they were given the information by occupants of a UFO that landed on their airstrip out there. And it was to harness the Schumann resonance. And a couple weeks before he was about to flip the switch on the Tesla coil, he mysteriously died, and all his paperwork disappeared. So it's still there, right? And it's still there, and they give tours and they rent it out and stuff, but it's not really quote unquote activated. So, by going there and sitting in the middle of the room and playing my singing bowls and things like that, I'm like, let's see if I can activate it. Well, I filmed it from different angles with cell phone cameras, and I didn't see them when I was there, but when I got home and started editing the footage, there are orbs flying everywhere.
Oh wow.
There are orbs flying out of my singing bowl. They're flying out of the center of the dome, and I sent them to a friend of mine who works for a video editing company in Chicago. And I was like, hey, Tracy, what do you think of this? Are these just bugs I didn't see? Is that even possible? Just because I was making noise or something? And she's like, oh, pizza just got here. We're on break. We'll check them out. I'm like, sweet. All right, good timing. And she's like, those aren't bugs. Those are translucent lights. And they're flying at right angles and weird things. Like, we don't know what those are, but they're not bugs. And it's not dust. They are light sources, and they're flying all over the place. They're coming out of you, they're coming out of the center of the dome, they're coming out of the singing bowl, they're everywhere.
Do you know about that thing where if you, I forget what exactly it is, but if you hit a certain frequency, it actually does create light? I forget if you have to hit like a water bubble or... do you know what I'm talking about? They did the experiment. They can't figure out why. I'll have to send that to you, but you just reminded me. Now I'm thinking like, I wonder if that's correlated, So,
Holy crap.
Hey, but we got to take a quick break. And when we get back, we'll talk about the St. Hildegard's Abbey and some more stuff. We're going to play a track called Vexations, and we'll be back after this on Think Theory Radio. Welcome back to Think Theory Radio. This is Dameon, and today I'm joined by Dameon Keller, author of Sounds Good, Sounds Great, Sounds Amazing. And the track underneath us is called Vexations, part of your Salon de la Rose album, and it has something to do with the St. Hildegard's Abbey too, right? Or am I mistaken?
In a way, well, not directly,
Okay.
but it happened around the same time. So the Salon de la Rose-Croix was, this was the 125th anniversary of it in 2017. It happened in France, and basically it was kind of a new Rosicrucian order. They were mostly artists, and Eric Satie, Claude Debussy were members. They're classical musicians, but they kind of started moving into pre-jazz almost, of shorter songs, just piano, just a simple melody repeated for a minute and a half or something. And so I did a 125th anniversary album of some of Eric Satier's songs, as well as G. Edgar Jeff, who was also an an esoteric philosopher and musician. And then actually Comte Saint-Germain, a lot of people don't know, was an actual person, and he did live, and he was an amazing violinist and composer. And if you look it up, you can actually find a lot of his music online. And I redid some of his music kind of with modern instrumentation. And actually a descendant of his sent me some that was unpublished that I was able to, basically cover and redo, where you couldn't get sheet music for it online. You could hear it, and between the sheet music, I don't read it real well, but between that and the recordings, I was able to put it together. So that's what those albums are. You can just search Salon de la Rose-Croix, Croix, French spelling, on SoundCloud and find those. But they're all done in the right temperament and pitch as well. So.
Well, now that you bring that up, and it's like this hours flew by, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of what's in your book. So we're definitely having to do a part 2, maybe a part 3, but. So you're talking about, because we teased in the beginning that we're going to debunk the Solfeggio hoax, but that also has to do with, equal temperament, scientific pitch, and the kind of misnomer that it's the frequency, man. If you just change the frequency, there's like this magic frequency that will. And so why don't you break that down a little bit for people and kind of the difference between real sound healing and the hoax?
Yeah, well, it boils down to people trying to interpret a lecture written by Rudolf Steiner back in 1910 in Germany. And by the way, about the chakras, that's attributed to Ledbetter, C.W. Ledbetter, a theosophist, around the same time, coming back from India, saying that the chakras associate to the light and sound, the light spectrum and the sound scale, the scale of the musical notes. Well, people took that to mean C major, and then with Steiner, he was referring to C at 1 hertz, which would put your A at 432. So now modern guitarists and musicians, and this is in 1910. Right. Nobody was really playing guitars. Nobody was playing fretted instruments. He called the piano barbaric because it was equal temperament. Equal temperament literally means, by definition, out of tune. It's not harmonic temperament. It's equal temperament, so you can play any key in any key and only be slightly out of tune, but it's just out of tune enough to totally F up what the 2 notes or 3 or 4 played together, what those create as brainwave entrainment frequencies, and then you add modern tempos in on top of it, and it's just not good, compared to actually playing in C prime at 1 hertz. So again, like A432, people just think this applies to their guitars, their pianos. It doesn't. Just dropping everything down helps a little, and if you tune it up, it makes it worse. So that's where Solfeggio comes in, and it's a total hoax. They claim that these frequencies were decoded from the Bible, and as I mentioned at the beginning, prove to me there was something that showed cycles per second, or hertz, back in biblical times, before the second was even a thing. as a measurement of time, and before you could even measure such a thing, I actually put up a thing on a Solfeggio Facebook page, and I said, I will pay $1,000 to anyone who can tell me how they measured a frequency in biblical times.
Mm-hmm.
You know who won? Nobody. Nobody won. They just got really pissed off. Right. They just got really pissed off because they're listening to aggro, super sharp music all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's what it does to you, where if you drop it down to 432, if you're married to your guitar, I'm married to some of mine. You know, I have keyboards. If I'm going to do it, I do it in 432, you know.
Yeah.
But the last thing you want to do is tune up, and the last thing you want to do is say, oh, this is perfect and everything's fine now. You know, it's really not. It's a happy medium if you must play guitar, if you must play a keyboard. And fortunately, I have synth programs from the 90s where I can program my own pitch and temperament. I can play in Pythagorean if I want. I can just only play in one key, you know. So,
well, and for people that don't know, so most modern music, it's when you hear it, it's recorded in 440 hertz, right? And
right, A440, equal temperament, you know, out of tune by definition.
Right. And that's the standard. That's the like American music standard, yeah.
So when you think about it in the 50s when rock and roll first hit, and you have these classical heads going, it sounds like noise, it sounds like garbage. They're not old fogies. They're musically trained. They're classically musically trained. They can hear those imperfections, and they're like, this is horrible, you know. And young people, you're drunk, you're partying, you're probably on drugs, you're at the club, you're dancing with your girl and all your friends. You're like, screw you, old man. You know what I mean?
Right.
It sounds great. Sounds great to me. But it's kind of like the Grateful Dead. Like, if you have to be effed up to enjoy it, it's probably not really that good to begin with.
Right.
You know? So, that's the Grateful Dead rule to follow. You know?
Well, I liked your analogy in the book, though, about music correlating to like food, you know, where you have like a really good meal, a really good, you know, high quality cuisine, you know, you go out to a good restaurant, you're getting, you know, top quality, you know, farm to table stuff, as opposed to like, which would be like, you know, really good musician, you know, the whatever, like the Santana or you know, whoever, but. And then the other one is, you know, you're eating a Twinkie, which is like Justin Bieber or something, you know?
Right, exactly. It's like make music.
Exactly,
You know? It's just, you know, it's factory churned out. They're going off a pattern. They're going off of rules. They're going off you know, just it's just a template that they just reuse over and over again, and nobody even notices it, you know?
Yeah. And now, talking about the patterns and, you know, frequencies, now people think that, oh, it's just, you know, okay, then the difference is just, you know, 440 hertz to 432 hertz. But in your book, you get into more that it's about the intervals, and it's about kind of the space in between notes, right?
Right. So equal temperament is out of tune by definition because they're just equally spaced notes, so you can play anywhere on your guitar or anywhere on your piano. Perfect temperament, or Pythagorean fifths, or what Maria Reynolds came up with, which was a scale of 12 fifths, which was kind of a happy medium between the two, which I could do on my computer synth program, is basically harmonic intonation. It's harmonic intervals where. So, like, if you've ever tuned a guitar or listened to someone tune a guitar, I know you've heard me tune a guitar before, and like what you do is you get one string in tune based on something. Like, it used to be a dial tone on a landline was an E, so I could just pick up my phone and tune my E string on my guitar and tune the rest from there. That's your lowest string, yeah. And you put it right on your shoulder with the strap, and it actually vibrates the guitar into your ear along with the dial tone, and you just match it up, and then you go to the 5th fret and you hit the next note until it starts warbling. So if you're hitting 2 notes and they're out of tune, they go wah 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 wah, and then you get it in tune and it goes wah 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 wah. interval, and then they're in harmony, or up. You're supposed to tune up. That's what tuning up means. So you're supposed to go lower to highs, it evens out. And once they stop vibrating, that's when you know you're in tune. Well, those vibrations are actually low frequency vibrations, which equate to our brain waves, and that's what a pulse brainwave entrainment frequency would be. And so those correlate to that. So if you're consistently out of tune, there's always those brainwave entrainment frequencies going on. But if you're consistently harmonically tuned, then you'll have none of those. And it's just clean, perfect harmony. And there really is no brainwave entrainment going on. You just really enjoy the music and get from the music what's intended, and not any kind of, again, ghost intervals that, like, I kind of invented that term, but that's what they are. They're just intervals that aren't intentional, but they're there, and they do things you don't want them to do,
Right.
but they do, whether you like it or not. And it's always going to be the case with modern music, because it's out of tune by definition. But if you play in perfect, perfect pitch, perfect intonation, perfect intervals, that won't happen. And I actually updated an article by Rudolf Steiner from 100 years ago, the one I was talking about, and I updated it because of all the advancements that have been made since then in measuring frequencies, and I'm delivering it to the Steiner House in Germany in July with a German translation. So.
Hey, well, man, I hate to cut you off, but the hour flew by. It's gone.
It's that time.
We talked. We didn't even talk about cymatics. We didn't talk about the new archaeometer. Like, there's a lot more to cover. So I'll have you back on for part 2. And I want to thank you for coming on. And if anybody wants to check him out, look up Dameon Michael Keller. It's DAMEON.